So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Atheists of Facebook online convention. My name is Kate Ashcraft. I'm also known as the Bluegrass Skeptic. I run a website at www.thebluegrassskeptic.com. The reason for the Bluegrass moniker has to do with the fact that I live in the state of Kentucky. So, I deal with things like, I don't know, creationism in school, God, Bible, guns, Kim Davis, Rand Paul, Mitch McConnell, and now, unfortunately, Matt Bevins is our new Tea Party governor. Yeah, thankfully, we also have bourbon, so that kind of eases the pain a little bit, but I'm talking a little bit because you can only drink so much bourbon to kind of self medicate away the reality of the hell you live in, that is the state of Kentucky. No, it's not too bad. I mean, it's nice when you go across the river to Ohio. The bridges are great until they finally fall apart. But anyway, so here we are. It is 2 o'clock, and today is going to be a change of plan. I had originally planned to speak on the topic of motivating our youth to vote to affect the secular society. I think some other folks are already going to pretty much cover that. So I thought instead I would cover RTS. For those who are not familiar, RTS is religious trauma syndrome. A lot of folks experience this whether they are currently religious, trying to leave religion, or you've been out for a while and you still deal with the after effects of the program that you dealt with. It was developed, the term that is the label, the recognition of it, it was developed by a Dr. I believe it's Marlena, I hope I pronounce this right, Winnell. She is I don't even want to call it, basically a human development specialist. She deals in a lot of psychology and social study of human relations and culture. Some of the common symptoms of religious trauma syndrome really remind you of post-traumatic stress disorder. There's triggers that cause anxiety, depression, sleeplessness, suicidal thoughts, avoidance of family. You can even cause you to cause a breakdown of your relationships with friends, family, neighbors, work. It's pretty debilitating, a lot like post-traumatic stress. RTS, though, is directly related to religion, usually, or some type of higher doctrine that's governing your way of thinking, rationalization, and way of life. Now, in particular, today I'm going to be speaking about the development of religious trauma syndrome, specifically the extreme negative impacts it can have as far as indoctrination on the sexual development of youth. Um, I personally came from an evangelical community, and today I'm going to be talking about a story I've written about on my blog before. So those of you who have read this story, no spoilers in the comments, please. Let's let people kind of hear the story and make their own opinions for the first time today. But this one in particular, it really hits close to home because this girl was a really good friend of mine for a number of years. Um, Same school district. I mean, we were neighbors. I hung out at her house all the time. Her family and my family attended church together up until I was probably, I want to say about 16, 17 years old. Then I ended up getting married and moved on. But yeah, I know, really young, long story, whole nother conversation. But today I wanted to go into this story in particular just to kind of put some perspective on what people can go through in the throes of belief, and then I might touch on more of it later. Usually, folks, when they talk about religious trauma syndrome, they're talking about when you're exiting, the nightmares that you have, the irrational fears, what if you're wrong kind of anxiety that follows leaving your belief. But you can also deal with religious trauma syndrome while you're still a believer, seeking confirmation. And my friend isn't the only one who experienced this type of. I don't want to. There's going to be some trigger warnings in this story because it's sexual deviancy in particular with this friend of mine. A couple of her friends as well ended up going through quite some serious stuff too while they were attending this church. And I don't really think it was the church in particular that did any of this. I just think I think they had very similar family types, is what happened. But her case is actually pretty mild compared to some other ones. But I didn't have permission to talk about other folks' experiences. They just were worried that their family or relatives might come across my video and just know immediately that I was speaking in regards to them. And they don't want to go there. They want to keep their anonymity. And I even hate having to refer to my friend as she and her in the third person, but unfortunately, she's kind of in the same ballpark and she's pretty active on my pages, and I don't want to kind of go, oh, hey, I'm talking about her, and everybody just, and her family starts to freak out because most of her family members, no idea what she went through personally with trying to find her own confirmation. So while this is a story about seeking confirmation, at the same time, for lack of a better phrase, it's truly fucked up. If you've previously suffered from any type of sexual abuse, I guess, family, domestic violence, that kind of thing, you might find this disturbing. I know I've had some readers on my blog go, whoa, you gotta put a trigger warning in there. I wasn't expecting this. I've gone through this kind of thing too. So this is your warning. There will be some sexual language involved as well. This is not going to be a moment by moment recounting of every single thing she experienced. But if you're at work, I wouldn't play this at full volume. I'm just saying, I wouldn't do it. So with that said, let me give you a little background about my friend. I met her in kindergarten and at Bible school. I think we really became close probably by the time we were 7 or 8 years old. Her mom and dad, typical middle class family in the 80s. Her dad worked in factory, blue collar job. Mom was a teacher, of all things. Nice house, had the garage, had the dog. She had a really nice room. Um, just really good home life from the outside. And that's the key there. This is all outside appearance. Things look great. Things look fantastic for her. I don't think I ever really understood how things could have gone so wrong like they did, but they went really, really bad. And I think part of that was because her family had this culture, as did mine. Family business stays, in the house, inside the family. You don't discuss things that go on. Also, from what I found out later, her father did have a very abusive childhood. He was physically, emotionally, and probably on some level sexually abused when he was a child, and that ended up translating into his relationship with my friend. Um, so early on, I think she had told me some of her earliest memories, she was always angry. She was always trying to get attention. Her parents were very fickle, I guess would be the word to describe their affection. She was not fickle. I don't know. The way she's described it in the past, I think it's just that she felt like her presence sometimes was convenient, and if she became inconvenient, basically acting like a child, um, hell to pay for that, usually. She had to follow a set ideal of what she's supposed to be and how she's supposed to behave, because she was a bit of a showpiece for the family, like their car and everything that's perfect. All the way down to like the nice little fenced in pool area. They got the irises going along the flower beds, along the sidewalk. I mean, she had a nice place, nice impression. Family was very affable. You could have a conversation for hours with these people. But they all also went to my church. It was a Pentecostal evangelical church. No, we did not handle snakes. Yes, there was rolling in the aisles. Yes, there was a lot of talking in tongues with the whole boom shakalaka stuff. So, a lot of anointing with oil, hands-on healing, prophesizing, end of world. I remember when we watched a movie from the 80s. What was that called? A Thief in the Night, I think it was, about the rapture, and then certain people were left behind and they were looking at getting their heads chopped off. if they didn't take the mark of the beast kind of thing. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff she and I were watching, exposed to all the time. So, like her, we were already getting traumatized early on, believing, what if we wake up tomorrow and everybody's gone. And I know for a fact her own parents would tell her that. You're going to wake up one day, Amanda, and guess what? We're going to be gone. That's what my parents would tell me. And so my friend would hear even worse. She would hear from her parents, oh, you're being so bad. You're going to be left behind. Like, not a chance of it, but a definite, you're going to be left behind. And you couple this with the fact she was always, like, trying to get her parents' attention. Oh my god. This girl, when she saw that movie, she was a total head case for, like, a month. I mean, I got over it after about a week or so. It bothered her for a while. She would come home, she couldn't find her parents. She was freaking out. And I think a lot of kids went through that after seeing a movie like that. You're only 7, 8, 9 years old. You're very vulnerable at that age. So, anyway, you get the idea. We had a lot of the typical evangelical programming, good works, good deeds, increase your talents, that kind of thing. And it got worse for her. I would go over and hang out. She'd tell me about how she stole something of her mom's. And I remember she showed it to me. She had, pried out every little, little gemstone, rhinestone, or whatever, in one of her mom's favorite brooches that I think belonged to a great aunt or something. And she destroyed it. She was just so angry. She was constantly angry. Couldn't make her dad happy, or, her mom would be mad, and then she'd go, your dad's going to deal with you later. And her dad worked, second shift, I think it was, because he'd come home at, midnight, and wake her up in the middle of the night to whip her, to punish her, to yell at her, to tell her, why are you driving your mom crazy? And this is after he's already had a bad night. And then he comes home and takes it out on my friend. And I couldn't imagine dealing with that. She would describe how she would hear his footsteps coming up the stairs. She would start to wake up when he would get home. And she'd hear him go into his room, and she'd wait to hear if his top dresser drawer opened or not. If his top dresser drawer opened, that meant his belt was going in the drawer, and she wasn't going to get whipped that night. And she'd roll over and go back to sleep. It was the night she didn't hear that drawer shut. She knew he was going to come in and wake her up, and it was hell of pain. But these are the kind of things she dealt with. She'd get that kind of rejection from her parents of, oh, well, you say you love God, and you're dressed for church, and you got your Bible, but here you were giving your mom an attitude, or you wet your bed again. I'm going to go tell the pastor about this. I mean, the girl wet the bed until she was almost 12. And her parents would just crucify her over it. They'd try to shame her into not wetting her bed, instead of either A, trying to be more supportive and understand what was going on, or B, try to find a real medical solution for it. So this was like an ongoing thing for her. There was always something where she was never measuring up. And then she'd go to church, and she started to think, this doesn't make sense. What is the standard I'm being held to? And she would often ask me this too, because she swore that she could feel like God was really there when she would pray. And she'd hear Bible study, about this, and, do what you're supposed to, God will bless you. But she also, we were told from a young age, when you're young, there's an age of accountability. And that's until you're 11 or 12. And she couldn't figure out why at 8 and 9 and 10, when she was sexually molested and abused by her father, she's like, why am I going through this? I'm not even at that age of accountability yet, And she tries so hard to impress God and talk in tongues, and she wouldn't get any confirmation or any break at all. You would think at the very least, her parents would ease up on her. Some sign that he was there and listening and on her side and trying to help her out. She would pray to him to make her stop being so angry. Because some of the horrible thoughts she'd have about her mom were just downright scary. I remember, I think we were 10, and I was having an overnight with her, and she's talking about how she started having bad thoughts about her mom. She imagined hanging her mom upside down and peeling her skin off of her alive kind of thoughts. That's pretty dark for a 10-year-old. I'm just saying, that's really dark for a 10-year-old. And I know she read a lot extensively and she'd go to the library a lot. So I'm not sure what she was reading at the library, but that was like one of the few places she could like go to get away. But she had gotten to the point where she was tired of trying to get God's approval. And she said, you know what? I'm going to make him angry at me and make him punish me. And I thought, kids my age, we read the Chick tracts. You try to piss God off, he kills you. So to me, I'm thinking she's trying to kill herself. What's going on here? And her rationale, though, was, and this is something we talked about later, was that if she got God to hurt her, to directly punish her, then she knew he was real, that he was aware of what she was going through, and she would totally straighten up her act. So for a while there, she would think horrible thoughts, about her parents. She would, or like, I remember one time I was over, and her dad had made, like, one of his barley soups and had a bunch of vegetables and stuff in it. And we walked out of the room. She said, get your bowl full. And so I got my bowl, and I sat down at the table, and she got hers. And then she leaned over, and she spit in the soup and mixed it in. And she made sure not to pray for forgiveness about that later. Like, purposely not repent to get in trouble. And nothing ever happened. And her parents didn't act any meaner or angrier or indifferent or any kinder or understanding. Like, their behavior was just solid, typical mom and dad. If you're inconvenient, we can't stand you. If you're convenient, we celebrate. No change. And she was so disappointed in that. And then she went even further. She said, okay, so God doesn't want to punish me. He doesn't care. Now what do I do? Because she didn't want to say that God wasn't real, that the Holy Spirit wasn't, authoritative in her life. That's like the ultimate sin you can't go back from, and she was not going to do that. She just wanted confirmation. And it was weird because I remember I went up to her room one day, and she told me about how her reflection in the mirror, she had this old dresser that belonged to one of her relatives. I think it was a great grandma or something. It was an old walnut dresser, old ass mirror. It had the I guess it was that mercury lining or whatever it was that's behind the glass. You could see where it started to deteriorate, and you could like see things in the shape of that. And she was saying how her reflection wouldn't move with her anymore. That she would look in that reflection of herself, and it wouldn't blink if she blinked, and it would stare back at her. It was obvious that that was not her looking back at her, even though that was her skin and eyes and hair. That was really creepy. I was just like, wow. And, and she'd go, it just stares at me back. I can stare at it and stare at it, and it won't blink. And I'll tell it I know what it is, and it won't say anything, but I know that that's a demon in my mirror looking at me. So yeah, things got really awkward when I started going to visit, because she had a demon in her mirror watching her. So she was convinced she had gotten Satan's attention with her bad behavior. And so she thought, well, if I can make this demon hurt me, then I know God's real. I know he's watching. And there's hope. There's hope that my situation, my family life, can get better. Because that means there is a solution, and I just got to figure out what God wants. I don't know how an 11, 12-year-old can get themselves into this type of thinking, but it's pretty twisted, and it's very thought out to think that you can have hope that things are going to get better if you get a demon in your mirror to come out and hurt you. Yeah, right? Well, it gets worse. So, I go visit, I get to go spend the night and overnights with her, and it got more and more awkward because she was telling me at this point her dad had molested her. She had figured out, what touches makes her body feel good a little too soon. She was about 10 or 11, this whole demon thing, and her dad molested her. And so at night, in bed, she would look over in the mirror, because this mirror was like across from her bed, so she could still kind of see her feet and whatever. And she goes, I'll dare it to come out and hurt me. Kind of like my dad did. And I was just like, what do you mean? And she's laying in bed at night looking at this mirror, and she'd be touching herself, I guess, masturbating or whatnot, and challenging it to come out and hurt her. Just basically come out of that mirror and sexually assault her, rape her, molest her, whatever. Wow, right. And this went on for years, quite literally years. I think it was when she was about 14 or 15, it had gone out of the mirror, and now it was following her. This thing in her skin, as she would say. Quite literally, she had gotten to the point that she believed that this thing was now manifesting in other parts of her house, other places that she would go to, visit, friends, church. This thing would follow her to church. And I remember because I went up to her room, I think I was about 14 or 15. And she had this dark, like, oak wood paneling. I don't know if you guys remember this. It was really popular in the 70s and 80s, this dark wood paneling. It's kind of thin wallboard, but it looked just like wood, had the texture of wood, had the grain, the knots. And she would point out in her door especially, there was like this really weird shape or whatever, which we all know now that's matrix, seeing, the human mind looks for whatever. But she said, see that, and she was like pointing out this knot in her door. She was like, can't you see the face looking at me and it's angry? And it was creepy. I mean, I could kind of see what she was talking about, it's like this angry face in the door staring at her, and like her bed's like here. So here's her feet, and where my face is this door at night, where this knot is. So she's seeing it in front of her. And she's still trying to get it to come out and hurt her. And she admitted that lately, when her parents weren't home, she'd go in front of this door butt naked, trying to get it to come out and assault her. This thing that's following her around, this thing that she'll see down in the bathroom sometimes when she's taking a shower. She'll see it in the windows at night sometimes. In all this time, it doesn't ever come out to hurt her. And she'll tell it, I know what you are, and come on, bring it on, Satan. All these things you can think of to invoke a demon possession. She believed that's what she had started. And that someday, this thing would come out and go, we tried to warn you and make you change your ways, and then punish her, kill her, whatever. She didn't care at this point. She just wanted to know that there was hope, that her situation would get better. And if that demon would come out and hurt her, that meant she could do something good and get out of her abusive household. Because, her dad didn't just stop at whippings or molesting her. He verbally would assault her. He'd throw things. It was bad. He'd grab her by her hair sometimes. He was not a nice man at all. Not a nice man. But he looked like Father of the Year to the rest of the world. So things went on like this for a couple more years, with the whole demon in the door following her around, and in the mirror and in the bathroom and all these other places. And she's out there making herself completely vulnerable to be attacked, to be taken, to be hurt. All in the name of confirmation. When she's 16, something really strange happened. She met a boy, first boyfriend, straight out of the gate, and she decided she didn't want to live in that house anymore. And so she revealed to her mom that her dad had molested her, because her mom had already seen how her dad's temper could be and the things he would say to her, because she would sometimes jump in on what the things that they would say. But her mom didn't know about the molestation. And so with that, my friend got her freedom. She got out of there. She moved across town to another friend's house that didn't attend the church at all. Like, she moved in with people that weren't even affiliated with the church. A school friend who was aware of what she was going through as far as, her dad. I don't know if she ever told her friend about the whole demon thing. I don't know if she would have, because I think outside of church friends, I don't know if they would have understood, or it would have really creeped them out. It would have been bad, I imagine. I don't know. So she moved out, married her boyfriend. Parents literally signed her off, an only child. Said, okay, you know what? There you go. Get out. I don't want my husband to go to jail and you're trouble. Go away. So daughter moved out. The night she moved out, this whole demon thing, it was gone. She didn't give it another thought. Well, hardly ever. I think she only brought it up maybe once or twice. She went through a phase where she used to talk about ghosts, hauntings, that kind of thing. And then she dropped that eventually. It took her a while. Her life was a mess for a while. I was surprised she wasn't a statistic. Because she tried to kill herself a couple of times over the years. I know she'd been hospitalized several times too. It was really dark for quite a while. Sorry, I just had my battery in the morning go off. Oh well. I'm a yapper. What can I say? Um, but yeah, she ended up getting married. She moved out, had kids. She was a mess. It took her years to pick up the pieces of what had been her childhood. Her innocence just gone. And I don't think she realized the fact that leaving and the fact that Satan never manifested, these demons never manifested to hurt her, God never manifested to help her or even give her comfort. The meaning behind their lack of appearance didn't occur to her until she was in her late 20s. It took her that damn long to put together that this was never a real safety net for her to begin with. That programming took a long, long time for her to deal with. And when she left all of that behind at that house and she moved in with her friend and all that stress was gone, I didn't really get to talk to her that much again or anymore. She kind of moved on with her life. I moved on with mine. She no longer went to that church, no longer got to go spend the night and hang out with her much. Now and then I can look back on some of the conversations we've had and try to contact her, but she's just not there anymore. And she's not there anymore because I personally have removed her from my life. Because that girl in that house was me. That delusion little girl that just did not have a chance of understanding how things really work. Understand what normal was. That was me. It really, really was. And I talk about myself as that person in the third person. Because to this day, I still cannot really, I can't really recognize who that was. I can't imagine myself that way anymore. Or having been that way. I mean, I remember the anger and everything else. But the absolute, I don't know if you want to call it hysteria, delusion, desperation, I just can't identify with it anymore. It's just like a chapter in my life you don't really completely remember. It's weird. I don't know if that was just like my, what do they call that when you don't relate to who you are? My separate self, I guess. I don't know who that was. It's like I can still see that image of that mirror of that person looking back at me, and I really do not see that as me. Do I see that as like a demon nowadays? No, I think that was my disassociated self. My colder self trying to remove myself from the stress of my situation, staring in that mirror nonstop. And it's messed up. I mean, I remember years later, my mom had said to me, she goes, I remember I used to stare in your mirror and rehearse and talk to yourself. And I'm thinking, my mom was a teacher for 30 some odd years. She had a lot of college and education to deal with gifted children. She was used to always saying how she knew an abused child when she saw one. And I'm thinking, and you saw your only child looking in a mirror, talking to herself. And I don't remember myself talking to myself at all. I don't. Not to myself like that. I was talking to my image in the mirror that didn't respond back to me, that I was sure was a demon or not me. She saw me doing that, and warning flags didn't go off. She didn't think to ask for help or talk to a pastor or whatever, and that's because I guess her family image and the appearance of who we were in the community, the church community, was more important. But yeah, when I left home for about a good 5 or 6 years afterwards, I was absolutely fascinated with hauntings. I hadn't walked away from God, but I hadn't connected the fact that, I was pretty much on my path to leaving belief. But I also didn't realize the damage I had suffered. And that, there were moments, even after I left, that would trigger me feeling like I was being followed, make me feel irrationally aware of like something being like right here in my face kind of thing. Lots of anxiety, lots of night terrors. I still have moments in my sleep where I wake up just, oh my gosh, I think, the world is gone. I can't find my family. I can't find my kids. I've been abandoned. And I know that's because of the programming I had growing up. And it's not so much that I second guess myself anymore. I just can't get that hard wiring out. I'm stuck with it for life. But luckily I know what my triggers are and my red flags are. And that's what I wanted to talk about next. What do you do if you know somebody going through this, you know someone who's been through this that hasn't dealt with it, or you know someone who's left religion but they're worried they're being, haunted by something, that Satan's talking to them, that God's disappointed in them? What do you do with people that have these insecurities? Or what do you do if you have these insecurities? Because this is something that's really uncomfortable to talk about. Because people think you're nuts. There is a large part of the atheist community that does not comprehend this level of trauma. They just don't completely get it yet, or they think, well, once you're out and you can know it's not real, how can this still bother you? And it's programming. This is what indoctrination does. It gives us these irrational fears. It makes you scared that something's going to reach through the surface of the carpet and pull you into another dimension. Yeah, I had these fears at like age 6 and 7. What the hell, right? And that's what religious trauma syndrome is. And what you need to do is, one, do not hesitate to find yourself a therapist. Even if it's a community therapist, they're out there. Find an online community. I highly recommend xchristian.net. x-christian.net. They have people on there who are going through this kind of thing, even if it's just second doubts about, oh gosh, what have I done? What's my bigger purpose? These folks are there to help because they're going through what you're going through. Also, you need to call Recovering from Religion. These people will help you figure some things out. They understand what you're going through, what you've been through, or what a friend of yours is going through, or you have a relative like I was that's in the throes of belief and do not even realize they're being traumatized. Recovering from Religion can help you figure that out. There's also a lot of community groups, and honestly, call a friend. Just don't suffer through this alone. It doesn't have to happen that way. Email me. I'm glad to help any way I can. I'm there to listen. I still have my own little hauntings. I still sometimes think I hear my dad's footsteps coming into my room at night. And I'm 38 years old in my own apartment, and I'm over an hour away from the guy. It happens. It's not going to have to be something you have to suffer alone. So anyway, that's my talk. Sorry it wasn't exciting and I don't feel good. It's kind of like, oh man, this sucks. But I just want people to know this does need to be spoken about. This does exist. Help is out there. Don't ignore it. Take a hand if you got one. Anyway, have a great time at the convention, everybody. Catch you around.